We're going to talk today about the procurement process and timeline for getting your RFP out the door and back in with proposals. So we've been involved in the RFP development process for the last 4 or 5 months with our monthly webinars, and you've learned about putting together your pitch deck, pitching it to the mayor or city council, getting authorization to proceed, how to do preliminary site assessments, and how to pick your team and get them engaged in the whole process. And in that process, you'll engage different people to get pieces for your RFP, such as your monthly electricity bills, as-built drawings, one-line drawings for electrical diagrams and buildings. And then you put that all together to write your RFP. Of course, it depends on your city, but it might take 1 to 4 months to get all of that stuff together, depending on lots of things, how many sites you have, etc. Then you actually get to issue the RFP, and you send it out with a schedule that you make, and everyone has to adhere to that schedule. Typically, for on-site projects, you schedule a physical walkthrough. It could be virtual, given our current situation, and it could be that you reduce the number of people who come to that. I'll talk about that in a minute. Often there's questions that get asked that weren't quite clear enough from the RFP. You answer those. The bidders say, yes, I want a bid, and then you know exactly who to expect the bids from, and you have a due date, everyone sends them in. Again, that might take 1 or 2 months to do. Then you get to the evaluation phase, and one thing that I advise up front, you know, if you have your technical review, if people didn't complete the RFP sections they're supposed to, then put them aside. Only deal with the ones that you can actually justify awarding because they're complete. You've already established your scoring criteria, weighting scheme with your team, and go through and do that evaluation. It might be if you're going to do a short list, you get 15 proposals, you can't decide who's the best out of that, you narrow it down to 2 or 3, and those are the people you invite to the walkthrough, and then you have them come and do individual presentations to your team later. Have your discussions and come up with final scoring. Again, that process might take 2 to 4 weeks. And then this last process of negotiating and signing contracts and getting everything built and commissioned, it depends. The timeline here looks pretty long, 3 to 12 months. It really depends. If you're doing 1 site or 2 sites, it should be simple. If it's 6 sites or 12 sites, it can take a longer time. You have things you are willing to negotiate on and things that you must have. During that negotiation, you establish when installation will take place, when it will be completed by, when things will be commissioned. Some of the things that are on the table for negotiation could be your RECs, it could be ownership options at certain points in the contract, or energy escalation rate. I'm going to focus today on a couple of these specifics with the walkthrough because they are things that maybe you've not had much exposure to. So there's 3 parts to really doing this in-person walkthrough. One is do it yourself so you know what to expect. Then you schedule it, and then you actually conduct it with people. We'll talk about all 3. First, you want to contact your facility manager, building manager at every facility, and go visit. Physically, go to the roof, go to the electrical room, sub-panel, where inverters might be located. Some buildings there's only 1 choice. Other buildings you might have 3 or 5 places you could put that equipment. You want to know where they are. Time, how long it takes you to do this, going from the roof to the basement or whatever. Make sure you know who of that staff at that building will be there on the walkthrough date, and make sure they have access keys to get you into those specific rooms, the electrical room or into the sub-panels. It's good to have pre-approval for taking photos. We're sometimes sensitive about that in buildings these days, so make sure you have that there ahead of time. And then as you go between the different sites, time, how long it takes to get there, pick your favorite map app, and make sure the address you plug into it takes you to the place you're intending to go. And make it easier when everyone else is trying to go to your sites. When you go to write the RFP, state whether all the bidders will be able to participate in the walkthrough, or if it's only going to be the shortlisted group. State the time, date, location, and for some larger facilities, it might not be obvious which entrance you are. You can be sitting at one entrance and not even see cars parked at the other entrance. So specify what side of the building. Determine the order of the sites and estimated time for each one. Each additional developer, it might take 5 or 10 minutes because they'll be getting people around the site, with social distancing and Q&A. Consider some sort of maximum for the day of sites, maybe 4 to 5, and limit the bidders. 1 or 2. Some companies have someone who just does the electrical, someone who does the rest of the site stuff. So 2 is not uncommon. Many do it with just 1. Reminder, we have COVID-19 out there, and it changes all of our calendars and our expectations of timelines. So it might take a little bit longer to do the walkthrough. And then if you have a really complex site that will require lots more, work, maybe save that for your next RFP. This is just being practical with what we see in front of us today. Could be because of COVID, you actually do a virtual walkthrough instead of physical. So do a lot of the same steps we just talked about, but now go yourself with a camera, with a camcorder, and visit all of those same locations, take pictures, and prepare a virtual tour for people covering the roof, the electrical room, subpanels, and potential inverter location. When you go to write the RFP, again, state who's going to participate in the virtual walkthrough, the short list or everybody. When you're sending out your RFP, include the as-built drawings for the buildings, one-line diagrams for the electrical, with the pictures of where those things are to give people a sense of everything. Again, have your schedule and time, date that you follow, and make sure you have the facility manager on the virtual walkthrough. So when questions come up, you can answer them right there at that time instead of putting them in writing and having to reply back and forth. Again, maybe consider the complex sites for a later RFP, and expect Q&A might take a little bit longer than normal because of this. Now I'd like to show you some of the things you might see when you're on your walkthrough and what you might be looking for. Most buildings will have, commercial buildings will have an electrical room. It might be outside the building, it might be on the roof, it might be on the first floor, it might be in the basement, but find out where it is. Inside that room, you're going to see electrical equipment. There's NEC codes that govern how much spacing needs to be in between all of the equipment, how many things can be on a wall. The rooms tend to be small. You got to make sure all the doors and cabinets open, that sort of thing. Your developer should know all of those codes. It's not up to you to know them, but just know that there are restrictions on all of those things. Things you'll want to visit. This is an example of a subpanel in maybe a small commercial building, not too unlike what you see at home. When you get to larger buildings, they look a little bit different. And this is just to give you an idea of what to expect when you're going to visit these buildings. The bidders will want to see these electrical rooms and subpanels. They want to know what equipment is there that's currently being used, where they're going to tie into the electrical system for the building, where they can and can't put inverters, and then they will use all that information to come up with estimated size and cost of the electrical interconnection. In the RFP attachments, you want to have the as-built building drawings and the one-line electrical drawings. Here's some systems you might not have known about or heard about before, but this is an example here at the top, PV parking structure. And it's outside, and so the inverter is actually housed under that parking structure, and it's outside, away from the building. It's sort of a self-contained system. In buildings, they always run the cable somewhere for all the electrical, and these are called raceways or cable trays. And sometimes they're going to be exposed like this, sometimes they're in the ceiling panels. But the contractors will be familiar with that type of equipment, but just showing you in case you've not seen it before. One-line diagrams, these are shown here in the top. It looks like Egyptian hieroglyphics to most of us. To your electricians and electrical engineers, this is like reading a book. It tells them exactly what the equipment is and how it's connected to the other pieces. On the bottom here, we see what it really looks like for what we view. These are the things we either take pictures of or they would come and see. They would want to see this just to verify that this one-line diagram really is all the equipment that they see when they visit it. This is sort of a cheat sheet, if you will. This is a built-out roof with PV on it. It didn't always look like this. Let's imagine for a minute we're visiting this before anything is there. And so you want to know, well, where can I put the PV and where can I not? So this would be one of the things you sort out with the building manager ahead of time. That PV can go in all of these locations, and yet you don't want any PV here. There's some cables and things like that. You can't cross those lines. That's why we have this unusual design. There's going to be certain places where you can put the conduit or cables that will collect all the energy the PV generates and bring it into the building. There might be one specific point on the roof they have to bring it through. There might be 3 or 4 options of where they can bring it through. Sometimes it's even brought outside the building, down the wall, and then inside. But that's something you sort out with the building site engineer. And then there's all the places you can't do things. So you don't want to be covering drains or HVAC equipment or other things on the roof. And you want to make sure there's always room for people to walk on the roof. Okay, so those are just an example of the types of things you can expect.